He's off. Yeah.
Yes guys, welcome back to another video on the channel, and today I'm going over a few slides and I'm also going to show you guys like how to group trade using Tradevate, along with explaining the macro times, and also just a slide which I dropped in here which I think would be important for you lot to know. So without further ado, let's get straight into the video. So the first slide, we're going over the macro times in which we personally trade. There's the London session, the New York AM, the New York PM, and the Asia session. So we mainly trade the New York AM session, and if the price action inside of the AM session is poor, then you can expect the PM macro to give you some sort of good setup. If not, then you don't trade the whole day, it's not a problem. But we trade the 950 1010 macro, and then if we don't find a clean setup inside of that macro, say due to the news at 10 AM just really didn't give us a clean setup, then we take a look at the 1050 AM 1110 AM macro, and then you have the lunch. So this is not a macro which anyone should trade. We never trade inside of the lunch. However, New York lunch, it runs from 12 PM to 1 PM, midday of the New York session, and around the 12 PM to 1 PM you can see a run on stops. So say in the AM session there was a lovely short, it went all the way to London lows. Then during New York lunch you can usually expect a run on stops. What I mean by this, price will retrace back through the move which happened in the AM session to stop everyone out, and it will also create lunch highs and lunch lows. And then for lunch highs and lunch lows, you want to mark that out for the PM session. So if you're trading the PM from 2 PM to 3 PM, which is the macro for the PM, then you'd look for lunch lows or lunch highs to get taken out, and then obviously target the opposing liquidity. And then which macro is the highest probability? Of course is the 950 1010 AM first AM macro 20 minutes after the New York Open. And I tell you now, I can't express this enough, if you find a clean setup even 2 to 3 minutes outside of the macro, you must follow your rules, because I see so many people, they say that they found the cleanest setup of their life. Alright, cool, you found a clean setup but it's outside of macro, so that's breaking your rules, right? So if you're breaking your rules, you're creating bad habits, and eventually you're just going to blow your account, or you're going to make some sort of dumb decision which you shouldn't have made. So if the trade is outside of macro or is breaking any of your rules, then you shouldn't be taking that trade. Make sure the trade's inside of macro, because price in the future is always going to offer you a clean setup. That's what you have to remember. Just know that this setup right in front of you now is not the only setup which is going to form. There's going to be a nice clean setup within the next probably few hours, like, or just the next day. So if you can't wait until the next day, then I don't know, your maybe trading's not for you. But you need to make sure that you stick to your rules. That's how you're going to be consistently pulling money out of the markets to your bank. And then another question which people ask, how do I approach the macro which contains high impact news? Very simple. Usually, say we have PMI at 10 AM or some sort of high impact news, red folder news at 10 AM. So basically the way we approach this is by not trading before the macro. I don't care if you see the cleanest setup of your life, we do not trade before 10 AM. And then once the 10 AM news hits, obviously we've determined like a bias by that point. Prior to the 10 AM, around 9:55, we'd be like, okay, we're looking for shorts here, we're looking for 10 AM news to come out, manipulate above this previous high, and then see the real move. Usually the 10 AM news will be like either the displacement, which you can then use as a fair value gap for your entry to go in that direction, say short to target London lows or the opposing liquidity, or the 10 AM news will be a manipulation above buy side, and then you'd see the real move when it displaces lower after. But however, the only thing with that, if it doesn't happen within like this next 5 minutes after the news, the displacement with the entry, then obviously it'll be outside of macro, and there you go, you wait for the 1050 1110 macro. Very simple. So next slide, how to set up and use the fib tool. So I've had a few questions on how to set up the fib tool. So when you open up your fib tool, just drag it across the screen and then right click it, and it will have a settings button. Go to settings and style, and then basically you can put whatever colors you like, whatever you want, and then just set it as 0, 0.62, 1, 0.5, 0.79. And the reason we do it like this is because 0.62 is the optimal retracement, so I put it as blue. That's the optimal level which you look for price to retrace. So you mark your fib tool from the low to the highest high, and then price would then be in a discount, and it will be a valid retracement at the 62% or the 0.62% retracement. So price came down to this level, then it will be in a discount. Price right now is in a premium because it's rallied higher with no actual pullback. It hasn't hasn't pulled back around to the 62% or even the 50% level. So price is currently in a premium, therefore you'd look for shorts, but it depends which time frame this is. I believe this is in the 15-minute time frame. So obviously if you're on the 1-minute time frame and you see this, then you're not going to say that price is in a premium because you haven't looked at the higher time frame. You want to look at the higher time frame, such as the 15-minute to the 1 hour, to determine whether price is actually in a premium or not, because the lower time frame is not going to tell you if price is in a premium. And that's all we use the fib tool for. So we just use it to determine whether we are in a premium or a discount, and it's just another confluence to our trade to know that whether we are meant to be taking longs or shorts. So now let's get straight into showing you guys how to group trade via TradeAvate. Right, so now I'm on TradeAvate's website and I'm going to show you how to group trade using TradeAvate. So it's extremely simple and I'm going to show you guys right now. So whether you're with Apex or you're with TopStep or you're with another futures prop firm which I have not heard of, and you're using TradeAvate as your broker, very simple. Here you can see I've got 5 funded accounts with TopStep, and these 5 funded accounts, I don't want to be executing each account every second so I can get into a position. So I group them together and I press one button and it's done. I'm in all of the accounts. So these are 5 150k accounts, and when you get funded with TopStep, obviously it starts at 0. And I had a 4.5k drawdown, and now my max loss would be at 0 currently, because it stops trading at 0 because this balance has got to around 9.5k per account before, and then I hit a fat withdrawal recently, which I've shown you guys on my Instagram. I'm very transparent about my withdrawals, and I hit around a 13k withdrawal and a 17k withdrawal. So getting straight into it. So what you want to do is, you see all your accounts here, whether there's Sonnet or Express, then you want to click Manage Groups. Once you click Manage Groups, don't worry about this. This is currently my grouped account, but you want to create a new one. So click the plus button and type in, I'm just going to name it as YouTube Groups, and then click OK. And then you'll have a list of all of your accounts here. And then you see this button here, you just drag them across, drag it across. Just like that, and then click Save. Account group successfully saved. Then click OK, X, and then click the drop down and it will show it here. So YouTube Groups account. Then you want to click it and it will show below your account, it will say the group you just created. Make sure there's a blue tick next to it. That means it's activated. So you're currently inside of the group trading for your account. And then say I usually trade with 15 micros on each 150k account, which is 1.5 contracts. Therefore, that's 15 times 5, which is 75 contracts, which will get split across each account. So I got 5 150k funded accounts and I put 15 on each one. So when you click buy, then it would show you 15 go into this one, 15 go into this one, 15, 15. And it's the same for if you used to go short as well, then it would split 15 on each account. And then obviously for your stops and your buy limits, say you want to set a buy limit at this level, then you would just right click here and you could set a sell limit. And if you want to set a buy limit, then you just left click. So you left click here for a sell limit and you left click here for a buy limit. And then if, very simple, exactly the same, if you right click on this side, you can set a sell stop, and if you set here, you can set a buy stop. And that is how you group trade. So obviously make sure that you change, when you set your buy limits, you change it to this. So you put in your first TP. I close 8 micros, which is 8 times 5, which is 40, and I put 40, and then I set a buy limit or a sell limit as my first TP, second TP, final TP, stops. And it's as simple as that. So that's the breakdown for how to group trade on TradeAvate. I hope that helps you guys understand that. And now I'm going to get into a full breakdown trade of one of the setups which we've seen happen this week. Very clean setup, and let's get straight into it. Okay, so getting straight into this breakdown trade of one of the trades we didn't take last week, but I will show you now how close of an entry we was. We was only a tick from getting filled and it didn't fill us, but it was still a very clean example of a trade that possibly could have gave you an entry last week, and it was a very clean setup. So let's get straight into it. So at the start, just before the New York AM macro, you want to mark out on the 15-minute time frame and the 1 hour time frame as well. You want to mark out the previous highs and lows on NQ and mark these out as BSL or buy side liquidity. So now you've marked out these levels, you want to head on to the 1 hour time frame and determine whether you have a bullish or bearish bias, and also look to see if there's any other bearish fair value gaps or bullish fair value gaps on the higher time frame, indicating that you're going to see higher prices or lower prices. So you can see that we've tapped into this 4 hour bullish, but that doesn't mean anything, because here you can see that price has swept this previous high on the 4 hour time frame. We've seen a fat displacement on the 4 hour higher time frame and this 4 hour bearish gap which price is currently in. Therefore, I wanted to see price then sweep this minor buy side liquidity or this buy side liquidity here, tap into this 4 hour bearish gap, or even the upper 1 hour bearish fair value gap which we have over here, and then we can look for price to displace lower, and we can target sell side and all the way sell side down here as well. So let's drop down to the lower time frame and wait for the 950 1010 macro and see if price offers us a clean setup or not. So you can see here price already swept this low and tapped into that 4 hour bullish gap, and obviously the drawn liquidity is a lot higher from here and it's a clean unicorn setup to go long. However, the reason we didn't take this is because look, the only entry that we did get was at 942 outside of macro. Therefore, I stick to my rules, we all stick to our rules inside of the group, and we did not take that trade. Very simple, we didn't take it, and we waited for the 950 1010 macro to see what we would get. So let's fast forward price and see if it actually offered us a clean setup or not. So as you can see, price came up to buy side and just kept running. So it didn't actually give us an entry or a clean setup at all inside of the 950 1010 macro. Therefore, if you head onto the 1 hour time frame, you can actually see that price came up into that 1 hour bearish gap I was talking about and actually tapped the upper 1 hour bearish gap and rejected it algorithmically. Therefore, we are going to wait for the 1050 1110 macro as we do. So we didn't get a clean setup inside of the 950 1010. Therefore, we're just going to wait for the 1050 1110, which is inside of this window. Okay, so this is where it gets interesting. So on the 15-minute time frame, you can see that price very cleanly swept this buy side liquidity and tapped and respected that 4 hour bearish gap to the left, and also tapped that 1 hour bearish gap to the left. Therefore, we got higher time frame unicorn setup forming. And on the lower time frames, such as the 1 minute and the 2 minute, we also have a 5-minute bearish fair value gap with a displacement lower on the 5-minute time frame. We also have a 3-minute bearish gap here with a displacement lower. But on the lower time frame, on the 1 minute, we do not have a unicorn setup. This is why it's very important that you look at both charts, both NQ and ES. So taking a look at ES, you can see that we had a clean unicorn setup, and I've seen this, and if you see that ES forms a clean unicorn setup but NQ doesn't, then that validates NQ as another confluence that shorts are a lot more higher probability. So what I mean by unicorn setup, basically on ES we created this previous swing high here and we took it out and then we displaced below this level here. So the displacement was from through the previous swing low and then it swept this previous high. So you just write uni there and then it displaced, price then displaced lower through that previous swing low and it left a fair value gap. But you can see here we look for an entry off the fair value gap, off a tap on the fair value gap, and you can see that price did not return to that fair value gap, and there was one tick from giving us an entry on that fair value gap. And then we targeted sell side liquidity. Obviously we don't trade ES, but we monitor ES for NQ as another confluence, and you can see on NQ here, if I fast forward the chart, we actually took an entry short. So here you can see at 1050 we've seen a displacement lower. Price didn't actually sweep that previous swing high, so therefore it wasn't unicorn setup on NQ, but it is on ES. So we've seen that displacement lower below this previous swing low, and it gave us this bearish fair value gap. So we marked this out and we looked for NQ to return for a tap on this bearish fair value gap. However, let's watch closely. Price was literally one tick away from, I'm not sure if you can see, but price was actually one tick away from tapping this bearish value gap, and it didn't give us an entry, but it was so close and it was a very clean setup. We had a higher time frame bias of bearish and we was inside of these lower time frame bearish value gaps with a higher time frame unicorn setup to go short and a unicorn setup to go short on ES at the same time as well. Therefore we entered short. Well, we was going to enter short off this bearish value gap and target sell side liquidity. And then you would run your first take profit at 25 handles, and you'd run your stop at the high of the unicorn setup. Therefore, your stop's around 17 handles. The max stop we put on NQ is 25 handles, so you wouldn't make a stop greater than 25 handles at any given time. If the trade makes you basically put a stop greater than 25 handles, it's not a good trade. Therefore, a good stop is always around 17 handles. And then first TP we run at 25 handles, so you close 50% of your position here. And then at 50 handles you run your second TP, which is here, so you make sure you're closed out around 70% of your position at this point. And then we run our final TP at sell side liquidity, which is at about 141 handles. However, you could actually run your final TP at the 79% retracement, which would offer you around 93 handles, which would be a more realistic final TP. Okay, so let's see how this trade would have played out. Even though it didn't give us an entry, let's just see how it would have played out if we was to get an entry. It's a 1 to 5 risk to reward as well. We're only risking 17 handles and we're targeting 93 handles here. So our first TP got hit, and then at that point we'd move our stops just above break even to around a 5 handle drawdown, therefore securing ourselves profit on this trade, whether it was to come back and stop us out or not. And we closed out around 50% of our position at this point. And there you go, so second TP was hit, and at that point we moved our stops to break even, and we closed out around, well, you would close out around 70% of our position. And there you go, so it runs all the way to final TP, securing a 1 to 5 risk to reward, and that's securing 93 handles. And you could actually have ran it all the way to sell side liquidity, because it did run all the way to your opposing liquidity for 143 handles. So it was an enormous trade, but it's just a shame that it didn't give us an entry all over one tick on NQ. But I know this is the thing which a lot of traders don't understand, because I know a lot of people, they would see this and they'd be like, oh, they'd be gutted, they'd be so annoyed and frustrated that they missed a setup. They waited so long, they missed the first macro, they came to the second macro, they thought they found a clean setup, and it was one tick from giving them an entry, and they missed out on like 10-20k. This is why it's important that the way you conduct yourself when you're trading, you don't just take dumb decisions and stupid trades which don't make any sense. Because the way the human psychology works is that you're going to think that I need to make money now. If I press this button now, I'm going to make money. That's not how trading works. If you place a trade now and it's not with your risk management and it's not with your actual rules, your set rules which you've learned over the past few years of trading, then in the long term, whether that short trade just worked out or not, in the long term you're going to get fucked and you're going to lose your accounts. So you need to think longevity with trading. This is all about longevity. We're in this game for a long time, and you're looking to build your capital up and build your accounts and grow and become a better trader and receive more and more bigger payouts each month, every single month. You don't want to think about today, you don't want to think about tomorrow, you don't want to think about next week. You want to think, where am I going to be at in 1 year from now? How much capital am I aiming to have in a year's time? What life am I going to be living? Where am I going to be? And you need to plan this stuff. You can't just be walking around not knowing what you're doing with life with no purpose, because then you're going to take stupid trades, enter short when you think, oh, you just see an SMT, okay, I'm short outside a macro. Why? Because then you don't know, you don't care, you don't know what you're doing. If you're following a plan and you know this is what I'm going to do over the next few months, and in the next few months, if you stick to the plan, then you're going to get a payout. It's so simple. It's so simple. People just break their rules. That's, I would say, 75 to 80% of traders, the reason they blow their accounts is because they don't follow their rules. And it's that simple. And I hope I've explained like basically what a unicorn setup actually is. So obviously when price sweeps buy side, the original sweep of buy side, say this sweep here, you would look for this high to get taken out again, and then look for a displacement lower like we've seen here. So we had that previous low and it displaced through it, and a bearish fairly gap from the low of this wick and the high of this wick. You can see this bearish fairly gap, and we looked for an entry, but it just didn't give us an entry. It was one tick off. But this week we secured 3 out of 3 trades and did not take a single loss. Secured a nice payout as well. Top Step, of course, paid me out a nice amount. And that's it for this video, guys. So if you enjoyed this video, drop a like and subscribe to this channel. We've actually grown. I actually can't even believe it, to be honest. We're at like 3,600 subs already on YouTube, and we started this channel like 2 months ago. It may not sound a lot to some of you, but like for me, seeing how fast the social media has grown, like the amount of support and the amount of people that are benefiting not only from my YouTube videos and my Instagram videos, but even inside of the group, people are getting payouts on payouts on payouts, and they've literally changed their lives. So it's insane, and I love to see it, you know. And I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we have NFP next week, and we'll see what we get. If you've got any suggestions for the next YouTube video, then drop it in the comments, or you have any general questions, obviously drop it in the comments, and I'll try my best to answer all of you guys' questions. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.
I just did my dirty, now I gotta change my sheets. Shit be rubbing on my body, sucking till my knees get weak.